Hello, my name is Patrick Allen. I'm an interviewer for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. And it is conducted here in Southwest Ohio at the Cincinnati-Hamilton County Public Library under the direction of Brian Powers. And today our cameraman is Aiden, and we have the privilege of interviewing John Michael Kostak, a veteran of Vietnam. And we are at his home on Uplands Camp Road in Kettering, which is a suburb of Dayton, Ohio. Today is July the 2nd, 2024. Thank you for letting me do this interview.
My pleasure, Pat.
John, do you go by John or?
Jack. I go by Jack.
Yeah. Okay. Is it okay if we use Jack today?
Absolutely.
All right. Jack, before we get into your military, tell us about when you were born and where.
I was born in Lakewood, Ohio, which is around Cleveland, in 1947, and grew up in Cleveland and went to high school in Bay Village.
What were your names of your parents, mom and dad?
My dad is John Kostak. He had no middle name. And my mother was Lillian Virginia Wiley was her maiden name.
Wiley was her maiden name?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
W-I-L-E-Y?
Correct, yep.
All right. When was your dad born, do you remember?
He was born in 1920. My mom was born in 1919.
Oh, so he married a younger woman.
Yeah, indeed.
What'd your dad do?
He was in the insurance business. He was an insurance executive in Cleveland for virtually all of his working life, but he was also a World War II and Korean War veteran.
Oh, great. What kind of insurance was he in? Life, health?
Yeah, life insurance, yes. Yeah, worked in Cleveland his entire life.
What company was he affiliated with?
Most of his life was Midwestern National Life Insurance Company. He was also with Lincoln National Life Insurance Company.
All right.
Most people have heard of.
So you say he was in the Second World War?
He was.
What was he?
He was a infantry lieutenant. He was drafted in 1942 and was assigned to the 79th Infantry Division. He was part of the Normandy invasion, landing at Utah Beach. Went on to fight across France and Belgium and ultimately into Germany, but he was wounded twice, and second time he was sent to Italy for recuperation, and gangrene had set in on his wound, so he was there for many, many months. My sister was born while he was over there. He never did see her until she was 2 years old.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm glad that he survived the invasion.
He did indeed.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
So, do you remember how far into Germany
that I'm not sure of. He was in recuperating in Italy when his unit entered Germany. Ultimately, he joined up with them again after his recuperation because he had to help transport German prisoners back and forth as the war was ending. So I know he was involved in that.
Did he ever tell you where he was taking those prisoners?
He didn't. Didn't talk about that much, so
right.
didn't catch that.
So he got a couple of Purple Hearts?
He did. He got a Purple Heart with Oak Leaf Cluster, so that's 2. He was also awarded a Bronze Star for combat heroism. And
did he tell you what he did to earn that Bronze Star?
He did. He was. They came under fire, and some of the unit was trapped in a French farmhouse. He went up to rescue the company commander who'd been grievously wounded, and they were under fire, and he was able to help bring him out. And he had always contended that my dad saved his life, so it was a dramatic moment for sure.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm. So when was he mustered out of the army there in
Well, he actually stayed in the reserves. That's why he was called up to Korea. He actually always loved the military, so he stayed in the reserves. and was called up to Korea in about 1950, I believe. I was just a little guy at the time, and my mother and my sister and myself, we moved in with my grandmother while he was overseas in Korea. He was with the 2nd Infantry Division at that time. He was a captain. So he served his time over there, and then came home, stayed in the reserves for a career, and ultimately retired as a lieutenant colonel.
Well, good. Did he have any combat wounds from the Korean conflict?
No, he did not.
So
No.
you say the family moved. Where did you move to? Where were your grandparents living?
They were living in Lakewood, which is where I was born.
All right.
And that's a suburb of Cleveland, and it was one of those, basically it was a Russian ghetto. We were Russian by background, and we lived among a lot of folks, went to the Russian Orthodox Church and what have you. So, yeah.
One of my college teammates was from Lakewood. His last name was Dubinsky, so he was a good Czech fellow.
Okay. Yeah, very similar.
So where'd you go to grade school?
Grade school was Glenview Elementary School. And that was in Bay Village, right across the street from our house. Yep.
Did you graduate from that school?
Well, I did graduate from Glenview, went on to Bay High School and graduated.
Bay Village High School?
Bay Village.
When did you graduate Bay Village?
In 1965. Yep.
Well, let me go back a minute. Your dad's over in Korea, and you move in with grandparents.
Yeah.
What'd your mother do during that time? Did she work outside the home, or she just taking care of kids?
Yeah, she was a homemaker her entire life, and a very good one, and a great mom, and a great supporter of my dad. And he had a lot of issues from the war, quite frankly, and suffered from PTSD. And back in those days, they just didn't acknowledge that or deal with that properly. But she was always by his side, and just put up with what she had to make it through all that.
I think back in those days they just called it combat fatigue.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Combat fatigue and shell shock at World War I and other names, but what we know now is PTSD. Yeah.
So did you work at all during your high school?
Oh yeah. I worked. I had a job from the time I was 12. My parents always felt that working was a good thing. I tried to instill that in my kids. My kids know that as well, and my wife knows that very well as well. We all work when we were kids.
What kind of work did you do?
Well, I had a paper route, so started out doing that, and then moved up to mowing lawns. And then when I was 16, I was old enough to get a job at a variety store and basically sold everything under the sun, and worked 25 hours a week when I was in high school. So it was
25 hours what? Plus going to school?
Plus going to school and sports and other activities and dating my wife. So I was busy.
You're one busy guy.
Yeah. My wife at the time was my girlfriend, so just to make that clear.
What newspaper did you deliver?
I delivered the Plain Dealer.
Cleveland Plain Dealer?
Cleveland Plain Dealer, yes, sir. That was the morning paper, so I hated getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go out there and deliver papers 6 days a week, and on Sunday I could sleep until 7.
So during the week and during school, you're up delivering the newspaper.
Yep.
And what time did school start?
School, gosh, I don't know, started at probably 8 o'clock, something like that. So I was up though, and obviously delivering the papers, and then I'd have breakfast and just kind of hang around, I guess, and then finally get to school. Yep.
How many years did you deliver papers, and how many years did you just do mow?
Well, from the time I was 12 until I was 16, I was doing those two jobs. So probably, 3 or 4 years delivering papers and a couple of years mowing lawns. Yeah.
So you're doing that during grade school and part of your high school?
Correct.
You were close to the grade school, but how about the high school? Were you walking distance to high school?
I was, yeah. I was always in walking distance to all the schools that I went to. Never took a bus, never had to have a ride from my parents. I would ride my bike, I think, sometimes, but other than that, I could walk to school, yeah.
So you told me you had a sister. Any other siblings?
Just an older sister.
And what was her name?
Charlene.
Is Charlene still with us?
Tanner. She is. She lives in Miamisburg, as a matter of fact.
I kind of talked over you there. You were telling us her last name.
Tanner is her last name.
Right.
And she lives in Miamisburg at the Sycamore Glen Retirement Community. And we both just, by happenstance, wound up moving to Dayton, and then ultimately moved our parents here in their final years.
You mentioned that you were engaged in sports. What sports did you engage in?
Well, my passion was baseball, and I played that from the age of 7 till 17, I think, is when I last played baseball.
What position?
Second base mostly, yeah. Yeah.
That was Bobby Avila's
Bobby
position.
Avila, absolutely, he was
Yeah.
my hero. Yeah. For those of you that don't remember Bobby Avila, that was back in the 50s, and he was.
I was a huge Cleveland Indian fan. Al
Okay,
Rosen,
there you
Bobby
go.
Avila, Bob Feller, and
Yep. Yeah, Early Wynn and Woody Held and all those guys.
they had a great pitching staff.
They sure did, yeah.
I hated the Yankees because they always beat the Indians.
I hated the Yankees. Always defeated the Yankees. Still hate the Yankees.
So do I.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're out of the lawn mowing business and out of the newspaper business, and you're working at the variety store.
Mm-hmm.
And did you work there till you got out of high school?
Yes. Worked there through high school, and then took other jobs, summer jobs, when I went to college.
Where'd you go to college?
Went to Ohio State, the Ohio State University, OHIO. Yep.
And what courses? What was your major going to be?
My major was ultimately political science. I just felt I needed to get a degree in anything, and so my goal was to graduate, and that's what I accomplished. So
You and I have some things in common. I was in liberal arts and political science and didn't like it.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed it. It was good, but my passion was to get an education, but also have a good time and be involved in other activities. So it was all good. It was great.
So while you were at Ohio State, did you have any jobs?
I did. I worked at the Ohio Union as in the information center there. So basically, it was the focal point of the university. So it was a good job to have. And a lot of my fraternity brothers also worked there. So we had a group of us that worked part-time there.
What fraternity were you in?
I was a Sigma Nu. Yep.
How many hours a week did you work at the Union Center?
Oh, I think about 20, something like that.
Well, that was a good load.
Yeah, it was a fair number of hours for sure. But I needed to make some money to help pay for college. So yeah.
Did you play any baseball at Ohio State, club sport or anything?
I did not play sports there. We'd have pickup games and things like that, so I would do that. But as a general rule, it was more college work and classes work in the fraternity. I was very active in the fraternity.
Well, during the summer, did you attend college or did you work during the summers?
No, I worked summers, and I was also in ROTC. So one of those summers was devoted to basic training, going to summer camp.
Where did you go summer camp for ROTC?
Yeah, Indianapolis or Indiantown Gap Military Reservation,
Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania. Yep.
How many weeks were you there?
I think it was 8 weeks, I believe. Yeah.
Then back to school in the fall. And did you just do that one summer?
Did that just one summer. I was working part-time or summer jobs back in Cleveland when I wasn't doing that.
What were you doing? Were you working at the variety store or someplace else?
I worked on a golf course most of those years and the maintenance crew. So that was, I love that. That was a lot of fun and outdoors all the time. So
Back to mowing again?
back to mowing. I was an expert. I could show anybody how to mow and how to set the blades and big gang mower on a tractor. I love that.
Oh, good,
Enjoyed
good.
that a lot.
So, did you graduate from Ohio State?
I certainly did. I graduated in 1969 on time. So.
Tell me what you did after graduation.
Well, Army was facing me. That was the whole focus of what was going on. I had 4 years of ROTC, so Kathy and I got married just like a week after I graduated, and then went on active duty shortly thereafter.
You sound like me. I got married a short time after I graduated.
Yeah, a lot of us did in those days.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, that was very common. Yeah.
So, how did you meet Kathy?
We met in high school. She went to an all-girls school, and I was in the town next to where she went to school. But a lot of my friends would go over to visit the girls at the all-girls school because that's where the girls were. So I knew a few of her friends, and ultimately saw this very pretty blonde lady and thought, young lady, I thought, she's somebody I'd be interested in.
And you've been interested in her.
That's right.
For the rest of your life.
She reluctantly allowed me to date her. So.
What was the name of the girls' school she went to?
Magnificat High School. It was an all-girls Catholic school.
Is that still in existence?
Yes, in Rocky River. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you remember what grade it was when you guys met?
I do. I remember very well. I was a senior in high school. She was only a sophomore. So, there was a difference there for sure. But she was advanced and I wasn't. So it worked out just really well.
So you remember meeting her, but tell me about where it was. And
Oh, we met at a dance, the Legion Hall, where the veterans of foreign wars had their meetings and so on, and they would have these dances, and a lot of the local kids would just get together and go to these dances, so we would do that all the time. And I saw her on the dance floor and asked her to dance, and she allowed me to take her out for a spin on the dance floor, and then ultimately called her up, and we went on some dates.
And that was it.
That was it. I was smitten.
Besides being in the Korean War, you've been in the marriage war ever since.
Yes, it's been wedded bliss for 55 years.
Yeah, good. And you have children?
We do. Our eldest is Carrie, and she lives in Houston, works as a NASA employee, or NASA contractor employee, and works on the next moon launch scheduled for a couple of years from now. So she's been actively doing that for a lot of years.
Where was she born?
She was born here in Columbus. She was born in Columbus. Because we did live there shortly after I got out of the service.
What particularly brought you to Columbus after the service?
Well, going back, I do have another child as well, and that's Matthew. He lives in San Antonio and works for Accenture down there.
Well, was he born in Columbus too?
He was born here in Dayton.
Okay.
So, Caroline was born in Columbus, and I forget your question there, Pat.
What brought you to Columbus?
After I got out of the active duty in the military, Kathy had gone back to finish her degree at Ohio U, and I went to Ohio U to get my master's degree. And then we both had job opportunities up in Columbus. So I went to work for the state of Ohio. Kathy got a teaching job up there, and so we relocated to Columbus.
All right. Well, before we focus on after military, let's get into your military. So when were you called up?
1969, so I knew, like I said, I was in ROTC and stayed in all 4 years, so I knew that I was going to be on active duty in the Army. So that was facing me the entire time, so I knew that was going to happen. And I got my orders to report to Fort Knox.
And that was in September of '69?
Correct, yeah, September.
Went to Fort Knox. How long were you at Fort Knox?
I was there for the Armor Officer Basic course, and that lasted, I think, about 3 or 4 months, maybe, something like that.
So having been in ROTC those 4 years, you entered as what, a second lieutenant?
Correct. Yeah, I was commissioned second lieutenant. General Westmoreland came to our graduation to commission us, and received that commission directly from him.
Good. So after Fort Knox, what's your next tour?
Well, I was in military intelligence, so as a military intelligence officer, that was considered a combat arm, so you had to go to either infantry school or armor school. They sent me to armor school, just depended on what the openings were. So after Fort Knox, then we were, Kathy and I had gotten married, like I said, just before that, so she left school for the time being, because we knew I'd probably ultimately go to Vietnam, so
Did you have a choice? Excuse me for interrupting you. Did you have a choice which side you would go in?
Which branch, or what was your question? I'm not sure.
They assigned you to an outfit. Did you have a choice on which one you went to?
Yes. Well, you did to a degree. I was, if you were a distinguished military graduate, which I was, not because of my grades, but just because of my performance in ROTC and so on, you could select the branch that you wanted. I chose military intelligence, thinking it was going to be a kind of a fascinating field. It was fascinating, but I didn't expect what I ultimately wound up doing. But I'm sure we'll get into that. But as far as where I went then to get intelligence training, we went to Fort Holabird, which I don't think is in existence any longer, but at the time that was the intelligence school.
Where was that?
And that's in Baltimore, Maryland. So from Knox we went to Fort Holabird.
How long were you in Baltimore?
That was another 3 or 4 months of training for just strictly intelligence training.
And Kathy's living where during that time?
With me.
She was with you?
Yeah, as an officer, we were able to go together, and like a lot of us in those years, there were so many soldiers, they didn't have room on the posts that we went to house, particularly married couples, so everybody would get apartments just outside the posts, and so we would make friends that way and kind of live almost a normal life, because you could be married and have friends and do things, which we did, and we actually enjoyed a lot of that time together.
So did she do anything there in Baltimore, work-wise?
Not yet, but she hadn't yet graduated, but we ultimately were then assigned to Fort Bliss, Texas, down in El Paso, and she wound up getting a job as a teacher down there for a period of time. So.
Well, let's go back to Baltimore. What kind of accommodations did you have there? What kind of an apartment?
It was a 2-bedroom apartment, and just really basic. Everything had to be furnished because you
Sure.
were moving all the time, and our first move was a car top carrier in our car, and and that was it. That's all we had. Then the second time we did take a trailer, but it was still pretty small. But it was fine. It was.
That brings to mind a question. What was your first car?
It was my first car was a convertible. It was a Pontiac Le Mans blue convertible with bucket seats. That was very popular.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How old were you when you got that?
Well, actually my parents had it, so I drove it when I was 16. Ultimately, they sold it to me for like $1 when I was in college, and so I drove it in college as well. But it was pretty cool driving around there.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
I'll bet. So you're in Baltimore. Did you have transportation there? Did you have a car there?
Yes, and my parents had actually bought us a car for a wedding present, because I had paid for most of my college, and so it was kind of a thank you for paying for your college kind of thing. And so we had another Pontiac Tempest is what it was. So.
All right, so you go from Baltimore, you go down to Texas?
Yeah, we then got transferred out to El Paso, which was way West Texas.
Oh, that's about as far as you can get in West Texas.
Yeah, exactly so, yeah. We loved it over there, though. It was great.
What are you doing there then?
I was originally assigned to the 112th Military Intelligence Group, doing basically what the job was to do background checks and things like that. But then I was also given orders to Vietnam, and they assigned me to the language school, which was there at Fort Bliss, and went to language school for 12 weeks.
Language to learn Vietnamese?
Yes, Vietnamese, yeah.
Did you mention that Kathy had a job down there?
She did. She was teaching there. I think most of the time we were there, and basically as a substitute. But she was given a lot of responsibility. She was 19 or 20, I forget at the time. So she was pretty young, but in the classroom and learning some of the skills of the trade.
While you were in Baltimore and in Texas, did you have to eat on base, or were you able to eat in your apartments?
Right. We just ate it in the apartments. Again, we had a great social life. We had everybody, not everybody, many of the people in those apartments were young military, newlyweds like we were, and just, it was a great time. We just loved the interactions with the people that we had.
Everybody was in the same boat, so to speak.
Exactly, and everybody was facing the same things we were facing. Vietnam was looming. We were going to make the most of the time that we were together, and that's what we did.
Were you getting any reports of what was going on in Vietnam?
Oh, yeah.
How were you getting those?
All different ways. I mean, we kept track of friends who had gone over there, people that were in our units that had gone ahead of us that were there, and it was all, just all right in front of you. You just knew it was coming, and trying to keep up with what was happening, and by the same token, not focusing too much on that because you didn't necessarily want to think about that.
Yeah. So, what was your next assignment after Texas?
Vietnam. So
where did you go from Texas?
Well, as it turned out, we prior to going, they gave us a 30-day leave. So we headed back to Cleveland because Kathy was going to return to Ohio University and finish her degree. So we went back to Cleveland for those few weeks. So I flew out of Cleveland. Kathy took me to the airport. Tough time saying goodbye to each other. And flew to Travis Air Force Base out in San Francisco. From Travis Air Force Base, boarded a flight to, I forget, I think the Philippines, maybe landed there. Then went on to Consonant Air Force Base.
What was your flight to San Francisco? Was that commercial?
Yeah, that was commercial. But there were other soldiers on the flight.
Sure.
But it was commercial, and then flew into San Francisco International, and then took a bus over to Travis.
Had you ever flown anywhere before you got into the service?
That's a good question. I think I was on an airplane maybe twice before. On our honeymoon, we were on an airplane. And I think one other time I'd been on an airplane. That was a pretty unique experience for me, let alone a trip that would take 30 hours to get where I was going. So,
where'd you go on your honeymoon that you flew?
And we went to Bermuda, so it was pretty cool.
Good.
Yeah.
So we've got a map here, and give the cameraman time to focus on the map.
We okay there?
Is this okay? Do you have any glare or anything?
Little glare if you bring it towards the front. Perfect.
Where did you fly into?
Well, this is South Vietnam here, and I flew into Tan Son Nhut Air Base, which was right outside of Saigon. It's a huge, great big air base. This is the one that you see if you ever saw the movie Platoon, and they're unloading people and supplies and everything, the forklifts and what have you. So great big air base. So flew in there.
And you flew in there from the Philippines?
I think it was the Philippines. We also stopped in Guam, so I don't know. One of those places we stopped just to refuel and kind of get our legs, and then back on the flight. Yeah.
All right. Was that a commercial, or was that strictly
that
military?
Was military, yeah.
How long did you spend there at Tan Son Nhut?
I think I was there about a week. We stepped off the plane, and the hot air and the everything, the humidity, everything just blasted at you. It was a shock. Got off there, but they immediately took you off to the tarmac and had us go through some briefings and what have you. And so we were there about a week getting supplies and uniforms and weapons and what have you to get ready to go out to our units.
Some of the fellows I've interviewed said when they got off the plane, in addition to the heat, it was the smell was different.
The smell was, Yeah, the smell was different. The whole time it was unpleasant, very pungent smell, and the Vietnamese would eat a dried fish oil, put it on everything, and everything kind of smelled of Nook Mom, which was not a pleasant smell at all. So, yeah.
Well, where did you house while you were there at Tunson?
Where was I housed?
Where were you housed?
They had a temporary barracks, so for the transits. So anybody coming into Tansanut that was simply there to get their assignment and move on would stay in these places, which is what I was doing. So, it was a time when everybody was kind of nervous and unsure because we were going to be sent in all different directions. Nobody really knew each other. We were instant friends for a few days and then took off going in all directions.
Where did they send you from the air base?
Well, I got orders to go up to Tuyanduk province, which was up in the Central Highlands in the mountains of 2 Corps. So I Corps, or First Corps, was up here. 2 Corps was here. It was the largest in terms of geographic area. And then 3 Corps was around the Saigon area. 4 Corps was down here in the south. That was the Delta. So I was flown from here up to Da Nang, Nha Trang. That was the headquarters location. Still trying to adjust to the differences. So this was a large base. This was not quite as large. And then they sent me out to Dalat, which was smaller still, but a province headquarters location. And I was there for a short time and then ultimately sent out to a district compound, which was Duc Trong, out in the mountains in the west.
So what are you doing while you're getting transferred to these different locations? What are your assignments at each spot? Or are you just moving?
We're pretty much moving. They did a few briefings for us as we would get to each of these locations on what was going to happen next, what units we were going to be assigned to, what kind of equipment we were going to need, and so on. So that was pretty much it.
So you finally ended up where? What was the spot?
The ultimate location for the majority of my tour does not show on the map. It was Duc Trong district, which was about 30 kilometers outside of Dalat. So it was accessible. It was just off Route 21, so it was accessible by convoy, but it was also mostly resupplied by helicopter.
So what were your duties there? What all did you do?
I was a Phoenix advisor, and the Phoenix program was very controversial, even by Vietnam War standards. It was a organizational outfit that was originally run by the CIA, and the mission of Phoenix was to neutralize the Viet Cong infrastructure, which were the leaders basically of the VC, and we could neutralize them by capturing them, getting them to switch sides, or by killing them. So those are the 3 options we had to get the VCI.
Well, from the information you sent me about the Operation Phoenix, there were a lot of spies on the various bases.
Yes, and all of the information we got was essentially by use of informants. We referred to them as informants as opposed to spies, but that's basically what they did.
There were spies against you also.
Indeed. In fact, my counterpart was ultimately determined to be a VC himself, Viet Cong, which was the enemy, and there were just so many who were duplicitous in what they did. A lot of it was because they needed to satisfy the Americans and the South Vietnamese during the daytime, because we were the ones that were in their faces then. At night, the VC would come in and they had to satisfy their expectations, and so people were torn in all directions. Very confusing, but nevertheless, the Phoenix program was in place to try and eliminate those people that were the leadership of the Viet Cong, and our job was to get out there and find them and neutralize them.
What kind of living accommodations did you have out there at that assignment?
Very primitive. Basically, we lived in sandbag bunkers and concertina wire. It was, we didn't have running water. We didn't have electricity except by, we did have a generator, so we had electricity in that mode, but certainly no air conditioning, no TV, nothing really nice.
How about the food? What was food like?
Food was terrible. The food was a combination of sea rations, which were probably the best of the lot of what we ate. We did eat local food, a whole lot of rice. I never ate rice again until about 10 years ago. I think I started eating rice. But we would go out with our Vietnamese counterparts, and in order to deal with the people, you had to sit down with them and sometimes have a meal with them or what have you. And so rice was plentiful, so we ate that and some of the other local food. And then we would be resupplied by chopper with normal meals. We had a mountain yard, which were the mountain people. This woman would help make our meals for us sometimes, so that's what we ate.
You guys told me you had World War II sea rations.
Yeah, occasionally the sea rations came in and they were World War II, and so they would keep for a long time is what it amounted to. But yes, we did have those as well. They came into the supply packs. Yep, sure did.
How was the weather? Did you have any monsoons? Or?
Yeah, the weather was hot and humid, and when it wasn't hot and humid, it was raining. So it was. Monsoon season was awful. That was very wet and just pretty miserable. The weather was bad, and basically you could never feel clean. I mean, you're constantly feeling dirty, and I didn't like that. But,
well, there at the base, did you have any shower accommodations?
We did. We had a gravity-driven shower, kind of like what you'd see on MASH or something like that, with this balloon type device that held the water for us, and turn it on and basically rinse yourself off with kind of tepid water. But
well, how about your clothing? How did you keep clean clothing at all?
The mountain yard women would come in and they would wash our uniforms for us, and so we would continue to at least get our uniforms clean in that manner. We didn't clean them ourselves, and they would kind of keep that for us, so that worked out pretty
good. In the
good.
living facilities, who cleaned that? Mountain yards?
To the extent that there was cleaning, I don't know. I don't really recall that we did cleaning per se, because I mean it was sandbags and plywood was what we lived in, so it wasn't something to clean, really.
How about getting a haircut? Who cut your hair?
Good question. I think probably, again, some local guy maybe would come by and cut our hair, but I really don't even remember that so much.
Some fellows would tell me that Vietnam person would be cutting their hair in the daytime and trying to kill them at night.
Well, that's true. I mean, that was just common. That was the norm. You just never knew who the friend was and who the enemy was. So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did your base ever get attacked at night?
A lot. Part of the whole deal was, you were isolated, and one of the things I was shocked about, shouldn't have been, but never could quite come to grips with, how could they send us out to a place like this knowing that we could easily be overrun? But this was true of all of these little compounds throughout the country. I mean, that was the way we operated. There was no front line, so what it amounted to is that at night, the VC would lob mortar rounds in on us. Occasionally it would be 3 or 4, enough to wake you up and make you rush to the perimeter bunkers, fighting bunkers, and have some explode, maybe somebody get hit, but it was enough to, that was it. Then you couldn't sleep the rest of the night, and it was like that. So yeah, they would attack at night. That was common.
Were things relatively quiet during the day and mostly attack at night?
Yes, daytime was much less so, but we'd also go out on operations during the day, so a lot of times we'd leave the compound, head out, and try and find VC, basically.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. From your base, you said you went out on operations. Where would you go on these operations? Into the smaller villages?
Yes. As a general rule, we had about a dozen American advisors on our team, and we would pair up. They were infantry advisors, so there were 2 3-man teams, and then myself and a staff sergeant, he and I were our Phoenix advisors. So we would have separate operations from the infantry guys, but basically the same thing. It's just that we had specific targets in mind to go out and find. They just were looking for any VC they could find. So so we would have intelligence that Nguyen Tong was operating out of Phu Village, and typically he would go from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. He would go and meet up with these other VC, and so if we were going to intercept him, we would need to be in that location on Thursday at between 4 and 4:30, and we had a couple of reports that this guy was a bad guy. So we'd head out and try and locate him and either ambush him or capture him or whatever we felt was the best way to get him.
One particularly bad guy, I don't remember his name, that seemed to be able to avoid capture in that program.
Yeah. Yeah, Jap. Yeah, he was very good at that. Yeah.
Did you have any weapons that you carried?
Yeah, I carried a M16. That was my primary weapon. I also had a .45 caliber sidearm that I would typically take both of them when I would go out. Yeah.
Were you ever shot at in any of these operations?
Yeah. We, our goal was to try and set up our own capture or ambush location, but in doing so, snipers would take a shot at us, or from time to time we'd wind up being the ambushees. So they would intercept us. So yeah.
Did you suffer any combat wounds?
No, I never got hit.
Close calls?
Yeah, I mean, any of those combat situations can be close calls because the rounds were flying, or in the case of the nighttime mortar attacks and so on, obviously shrapnel's flying, and so you just gotta hope that it's not you that gets it.
So obviously your language schooling did you a lot of good there.
It did. I did have an interpreter because my language schooling was just a condensed version of that. I wasn't fluent, but I could speak it well enough that they couldn't just talk in front of me without me knowing what they were saying. So
generally speaking, you could get the gist of their conversation.
Correct, and I could also, when we would capture somebody, I could also go face to face with them and let them know I know how to talk like they talk, and say a few things that were cogent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you encounter just an average run-of-the-mill villagers?
Yeah, oftentimes. And
how did they react to you?
Mixed. Some seemed to be happy to see us. Others not happy at all to see us. Avoid us. Try not to look at us. But there was never what I would call really open hostility. I think a lot of them felt that, but they were so used to being in this situation that they just had to cope with it. From their standpoint, it was an intrusion for us to be there. It was an intrusion for the South Vietnamese Army to be there, for the VC to be there, for the NVA to be there. They just wanted to grow their rice and just get from day to day and try and live.
How about kids? Did you encounter any kids?
Yeah, the kids were
any
cute.
Treats for the kids? Or anything?
Yeah, absolutely. The kids were always yelling GI number one, and with their hands out and give them candy and just they were cute. They were great, but poor kids. I mean, they dealt with all this stuff. So
Now, from your base, how far out did you get into?
not very. What our job was, there were like 700 of us throughout the country. When I say us, Phoenix Advisor. So from here all the way up to here, there were just 700 Phoenix guys, and so there were just 2 of us. And for part of the time, it was just me by myself with my South Vietnamese counterparts. So we would operate in a district of about the size of a county in Ohio, like Montgomery County. That would be the area that we would concentrate on and stayed within those boundaries.
We about finished with this?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, God, I just knocked
Oh,
the
that's all right.
lamp.
No problem.
Hope I didn't break anything. If I did, I'll pay for it.
No, I'm sure it's fine. There we go.
Is that all right?
Yeah, it looks fine. Yep. No problem.
Oh, it's excitement when I'm around.
Thank you, Ken.
Now, here's something you showed me before we started.
Yeah.
Let Aiden focus in on this. Tell us what this is.
This is a Viet Cong flag, and we ran a night operation and went out to a village that was notorious for VC activity. So we were going to go out there. We had intelligence that the village chief, who we believe was VC, was going to be at this location in a particular hooch out there. So we were going to run an operation to try and capture him. So we went out there. He was not there, unfortunately, but they were flying the VC flag from the flagpole in the center of the village. So we took down the VC flag. My counterpart handed me the flag and said, "Here, you take this home." So I had to register it as a war trophy and brought it home. So
We able to get that? Well, I've heard that, before you were able to leave country, that you were supposed to leave everything that you had there.
yeah.
How did you say you registered it? How did you get that through?
Well, they did have a system where there were certain things that you were allowed to bring home. You couldn't, for example, bring home an AK-47, but you could bring home other what we called Chi-Com weapons. We had a whole bunch of those. I could have brought one of those home if I had, again, gone to the registration location. When you're out processing and ready to leave, you go to that. And but I chose not to bring one of those things. But I did have this flag, and they allowed that to be a war trophy, and said that was okay to bring home. They gave me a certificate that said it was okay to take on the plane, and sure enough, I did.
So how long were you over in Vietnam?
I was there from September to June 21st, so a little under a year. I did get an early out because at that time they were starting to let some of the troops leave a few weeks earlier than their scheduled return date. I had my replacement arriving, so I think since they had a guy that was coming in to replace me, I was in a position to be able to leave a little early. And as it turned out, it was our second wedding anniversary that I arrived home, and Kathy and I contended that had the Army known that, they would have kept me one more day, but they didn't know, so I got home on our second wedding anniversary.
How were you told that you were going to be getting out early? Was that a note or something personally? Or?
No, they would send orders out. So by courier, we'd get various supply runs in, and on board those would occasionally be orders for somebody to report to some other location, or that we were getting a replacement in, or what have you. And so I got my order saying that they approved me for an early release.
How often were you able to communicate with Kathy by any means while you were there?
Well, there was no Zoom or email or anything like that, obviously, at that time. So it was all by letter, and letters were sporadic. You know, sometimes we'd get mail in, and I'd get 7 letters from her at one time, and then I'd go for a week and a half and not get anything. So it was very sporadic as far as that goes. We were able to communicate 3 times via Mars calls, which were phone calls that you could make if you were back at a headquarters location, which I was for these 3 back in Delot, because periodically we'd go back there for different reasons. And you could sign up for these 3-minute calls, and ham radio operators would allow you to talk back and forth. It was you had to talk like you were talking on a radio. That is, how are you doing? Over. And she'd say, I'm doing fine. How about you? Over. And you know, that kind of thing. So and 3 minutes was it. Then you had to get off. But we were able to do that 3 times, and it was wonderful. Hearing her voice was just amazing, because we were so isolated. I felt so alone that the chance to talk to my wife for 3 minutes was wonderful. It was great.
How often did you write to her?
Oh gosh, a lot. We probably wrote to each other, not every day, but probably every other day. Both of us would write a letter, and I mean, that's what you did. You'd sit down and write at least a quick note.
You're out there in the jungle. How are your letters getting out of your base?
Mostly by helicopter. They'd come in, you know, every few days or so, and if the weather was good, and resupply us, and then pick up mail and what have you, and take that out and deliver mail. And you know, the big red bag was what you lived for. That was the one thing that was the most important thing in the whole world, was getting a letter from your loved one.
Did you communicate with your mom and dad at all?
Same thing, by letter. We also actually, I forgot this, we did do cassette tapes. From time to time we would send those back and forth. I think that kind of came later in my time there, but we sent a few of those back and forth, both with my parents and with Kathy. Yeah.
So what was Kathy doing all the time you were over there? Was she attending OU?
She was back at Ohio University, and fortunately she was able to move into her sorority house again, and some of her sorority sisters were still there, because she'd just taken that 1 year off when we were moving around the country, and she got back and had been taking some correspondence courses, so she was almost caught up to the rest of her class at that point, and was finishing her degree there. Yeah.
If I were to ask you, which I am, what the most memorable thing you went through while you were in country, what would that have been?
Wow, most memorable thing. Well, first of all, I would just say that year was probably the most unique year of my life, and in some ways probably the most consequential, because it was just kind of defined a lot of, you know, the contrast between that and regular life that I've been able to live the rest of my life. So that for sure. I think and forgive me, but your question was, what was the most memorable thing about it? I would say the sense of loneliness was probably the most impactful feeling that I had while I was there, because that was pervasive. That was every day. Every day was lonely. It felt lonely, even though I had good friends, good people, even Vietnamese people that were very nice and what have you. But I felt so isolated, so alone, that was probably the thing that sticks with me the most.
How would you get from your base of operation out to your different operations in that area you described as about a county-wide?
Yeah, sometimes we just walk out of the perimeter and begin walking. So it was, we just head out marching to whatever place we were going to go. You know, a lot of times it was close enough that it would be maybe a 5 or 6 mile march out to a village. sometimes we would pick up trucks and take a convoy out to a certain point and then debark from the trucks and head on out, and then sometimes by chopper. So choppers would come in and take us out if it was far enough out. We'd take
While you
choppers.
were on any of your choppers, did you take ground fire?
I assume we probably did. There was never really a situation where there was heavy, that I was involved in, where there was heavy ground fire when I was on a chopper. But choppers were wonderful. I mean, we loved them. They were our lifeline, obviously, and they were just very, very good. So
Tell me about walking out in the jungle on these trails. Did you have to be aware of booby traps or mines?
yes, there was that, and we also had to be aware of just where the VC might be. If they knew we were coming, that was not good. And oftentimes, because my counterpart was, for a period of time, was ultimately determined to be a VC sympathizer, he would often alert who it was that we were coming out to try and deal with. And actually, I told Kathy this in letters, and because she was really upset about it, and I don't blame her for that, but I said, not to worry. He would let them know ahead of time they wouldn't be there. So they would let us come out. We wouldn't find our targets. There was nobody to neutralize.
So it was safer than if you wasn't.
Yeah, and it turned out to be a better situation. Once he was gone, we found it getting more contact, and that was good in some respects, but bad in others. So,
How did you ultimately find out that he was a VC?
there was a lot of talk about that. I can't even recall exactly how it came to pass, but that.
Just coincidence that they wouldn't be there when you were going out?
Right, and we got whispers from other Vietnamese counterparts of ours that, this guy seems to be maybe in cahoots with somebody else. And so, we had some of that conversation going. Then one night, as it turned out, some unit came in, took him away. We heard he went to the tiger cages, which was not a good thing to wind up doing. So they knew, and he was gone one night. Next day he was gone. So after that, got a new counterpart, different guy.
Was he Vietnamese too?
Yes, yeah. So all the entire unit that we worked with were South Vietnamese soldiers. So they were all that.
Well, these 700 people in this Phoenix program were able to, I'm going to say, neutralize a lot of the Viet Cong.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, did some of the ordinary citizens get caught up in that too?
Yes. That was part of that was the essence of how controversial this was. There were Senate hearings and all kinds of things about the Phoenix program ultimately. But in its defense, like I said, it was originally run by the CIA, turned over to military intelligence in 1968. So by the time I got there, it was supposedly all military intelligence run. We did report to a couple of CIA agents in our province from time to time to let them know and what was going on, and they would ask questions and what have you, but basically hands off. But unfortunately, what we had to rely on were these informants, what Pat called earlier spies, who would give us information, and if we had 3 reports of an individual who was doing activity that was Viet Cong related, then we assumed he was a target who could be neutralized, he or she. And unfortunately, there were times that this could be just reciprocity for some sort of action that somebody didn't like, and they weren't necessarily VC. I seem to recall that 2 reports were good enough, and we would get 2 of those and go out and you know, either capture people. Sometimes we'd go out and all we would do was capture people and then send them back, and nobody would get hurt. So that was good. Other times, of course, we'd go out and set up an ambush and try and take them out. So.
Did you have any increase in grade while you were over there? Did you get any promotions?
I was promoted to first lieutenant upon my arrival, actually, in Vietnam, and that was normal. I went in as a second lieutenant. After 1 year, you were promoted to first lieutenant. Had I stayed in active duty, after my second year, as soon as I was done with Vietnam, I would have been promoted to captain, but elected to not do that, to get back to my civilian life. So.
Where did you leave Vietnam from?
That was also from Tan Son Nhut, where I had arrived to, and that too was, you know, a circuitous route to get there, but ultimately was there for a few days of out processing, where I got the registration for the flag and what have you, and turned in my equipment and my weapons and what have you.
Did Kathy know when you were coming home?
She did. We somehow communicated by letter, of course, and I must have told her when I arrived at Travis Air Force Base that I would be heading over to, I don't know how I got in touch with her, because we didn't have cell phones or anything, but I did let her know that I would be on a flight. She was going to drive up from Athens at Ohio University to Columbus and pick me up there and bring me back to our
So did you come by commercial flight from Da Nang up to Travis?
That was military, and then to Travis, and then they bussed us over. They again did out processing, tried to get us to re-up. I wasn't going to do that.
What did they offer you?
Oh gosh, I was going to be promoted to captain. I could go to Germany. I could, my choice of location there, and all kinds of goodies, plus other benefits, I'm sure. None of which, had I told Kathy we were doing that, she would have said, "Well, that's it. I'm staying here. You go."
Yeah.
So we opted not to do that.
So then you took a commercial flight to Columbus?
Correct, out of San Francisco Airport. Yeah.
When you arrived in Columbus, were you in civilian clothes or uniform?
No, I had to still be in uniform. I had to be in uniform even on commercial flights in order to not have to pay for the flight. So.
Have any problem with the airport?
No, but Kathy brought a change of clothes for me to change into right away, to get out of my uniform in the men's room at Columbus Airport, because we were heading back to Athens, Ohio, to go on campus, and it would not be pretty if I'd arrived on campus in a uniform, having just returned from Vietnam. That wouldn't be a good thing.
While you were over there, were you hearing about the problems here in the States with involvement in the Vietnam War?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And
what effect was that having on you, if any?
Well, I was torn, quite frankly. I mean, I was a soldier who wanted to do my duty. I had volunteered essentially because I was in ROTC, and I knew I was going to go to Vietnam. I knew I had a job to do. I knew that others were counting on me to support them as I expected them to support me. So all that was in my head. But the other side of it was this war was not good. We were not winning. I was very frustrated with how we were trying to prosecute the war. The VC were there when I got there. They were there when I left. There was, in my mind, no change to anything that I did or anything that my fellow soldiers did to change how the trajectory, how that war was going. So it was just very difficult. I was very torn about how it all was going down. So I was just anxious to come home and kind of put it behind me and get on with my life.
When did you first see your parents after you got back? We were just the two of us together, which was really, really a good thing for
first week, I believe, and then my parents had a little party for me back in Cleveland that following week. So we went up there to Cleveland, and my relatives were there to greet me, and I saw them. So it was very nice, and I was welcomed home by them. So it was good.
Okay, where were you living when you had Caroline?
We had moved to Columbus, and Carrie came along in 1977. So that was like 5 years.
What was the job? You said that both of you came to Columbus and you had jobs. What was the job that brought you to Columbus?
Well, we were in Athens there for a year because Kathy had just finished her degree, or was just finishing it, and I was going to master's degree there. So so I enrolled there on the GI Bill too, by the way, and then finished that. She had gotten a teaching job there in Athens, so she was teaching while I was getting my master's degree.
What did you get your master's in?
That was public administration. So I was going to go work for the government, do good things, and hopefully continue to do things in the civilian capacity. So we both got jobs in Columbus. We did some interviewing, and she got a teaching job up there. I got a job with the state of Ohio, the Department of Administrative Services, and moved up to Columbus, and really enjoyed our time there. And that's when Carrie came along, and lived there for a few years. But then that whole government working thing, I decided I wanted to get into the private sector, and took an opportunity to move here to Dayton with another job. So
Where did you live in Columbus?
we were in Westerville, so it was outside of town, but really nice area.
There's a university there. Is that
Yeah.
where Otterbein is?
Otterbein is in Westerville, yes.
I had a question, but so did Kathy get a job before she had Caroline?
Yes, she was.
You said she was teaching.
Yeah, she had a
But what
teaching
school
job.
did she teach in? High school, grade school?
She was teaching, I think, a grade school out in on the west side of Columbus for a couple of years, and then she got a job that was closer, but it was a parochial school in near where we lived. So she did teach there, but then she took a year off when Carrie came, and so took care of her, and then got another teaching job after that, or went back to that school. Yeah.
So what job brought you to Dayton?
I had an opportunity to work for Monarch Marking Systems, which was in Miamisburg. It's now part of Avery Dennison. They made price tag equipment, that sort of thing. But it was an opportunity to get out of government and get into the private sector, where advancement was better, pay was better, opportunities were better. And it turned out to be a good move for us. Came here, advanced through the ranks there, and ultimately started looking to go out on my own and have my own company and so on. But it was good. It was a good place and good.
So what did you do on your own?
Well, I stayed at Monarch for a number of years. Then they had a large reduction in force, and I was able to get a package out of that at the time that I was also looking to potentially have my own business. And in the meantime, I'd gotten an MBA with them that they paid for, actually, while I was there.
Where did you get that?
At Bowling Green,
Okay.
through the executive MBA program up there. So I had the MBA, and I was anxious to do my own thing, so I started looking for companies, and didn't want to do my own startup, but wanted to perhaps purchase a business. And All Seal Home Improvement was on the market. The owner was getting ready to to sell and move and retire, and seemed to be a good fit, so made that work out, and so bought that business and grew that for a number of years, and ultimately wound up with 3 locations for that company, and owned that business for about 28 years, I think.
Is that what you retired from?
I did. I sold the business to another young man who wanted to have his own company, and he was able to put together a package and buy me out. So I went ahead and sold out to him, and so they're doing fine with him under his leadership, and a very good company. So it's all
So
good.
how long have you been retired?
7 years, and I've been loving it. It's been very good. So I'm happy to be retired. I didn't necessarily think I would want to be retired, but as it turned out, I like it.
So what do you and Kathy do in retirement?
Well, we're both retired now, so we do as much as we can. We used to do a lot of traveling, been a little more limited in recent years about being able to do that, but with some health issues and what have you. But nevertheless, we do that. I play a lot of golf. I do a fair amount of volunteer work. Just finished a big effort with Folds of Honor that myself and a co-chair here locally in Dayton just did that this past Friday, I'm sorry. And I also volunteer out at Four Paws for Ability, where we train service dogs for disabled veterans and kids who have disabilities. And I actually was also on the board of the Veterans History Center, Veterans Affairs History Center out at the Dayton VA, where the VA is establishing their history location. So I was on that board for 7 years. Just went off of that this past January, I think.
What was Kathy doing while you were working with your own business?
She was teaching, and she taught gifted kids a good deal of the time. That was a lot of her career, as well as she was certified as a gifted teacher. She also had a master's degree in counseling, and also taught classroom, junior high much of the time, and science and history and other disciplines.
What schools did she teach in?
Locally, she taught in Waynesville. She also taught St. Helens for a year, actually, but Waynesville for a number of years. Then she was recruited to teach out in Beaver Creek, so she retired from full-time teaching in Beaver Creek, and then took a part-time teaching position up in Bethel schools up north, and also did.
Was that in Miami County? Bethel?
Yes, it is, and she. So she taught there, and that was part-time, gifted, and also supervised student teachers at UD. Did that as a part-time job, and also taught out at what was formerly called Antioch as an adjunct teacher out there for a while, adjunct professor.
She's had quite a career also.
She has indeed. She's an amazing woman, and the love of my life.
We haven't talked much about Matt. What's Matt doing?
Oh, he's doing well. He's down in San Antonio. He works for Accenture. He's a software engineering individual down there who has a really good career going with them. He had gone to college up here, and then after graduation worked in Columbus for a number of years, and then went down to San Antonio with the same company with a broader role. So that's been good for him.
You have grandchildren?
We do. We have 2. Carrie's kids, our NASA child, and she has 2 kids. Alex, who's a freshman at Michigan, so it's hard for me to accept that. But
We kind of say that behind closed doors.
we do. I say freshman. He's not freshman. He'll be a sophomore. But we say it behind closed doors. But we have a friendly rivalry. He grew up a Ohio State fan because I forced him to do that. But no, he's doing very well there, and it's great. And then Emma, our 16-year-old granddaughter, she has been here for a few weeks. She just left this morning with her dad, but they live in Houston. She goes to high school there in Houston.
So what's Matt studying? Has he got any goals up at Michigan?
Yeah, he's that's Alex, who's our grandson. Rather, yeah, he's he's at Michigan. He's in engineering. He's going to be a mechanical engineer as his field of study.
Good.
Yeah.
Was there anything we haven't talked about you think I missed in this
You were very thorough, and I appreciate it greatly. Yeah, it was.
Kathy, do you have anything you'd like to tell us about your wonderful husband?
He is wonderful, and I feel like
Come over here.
not went to Vietnam, but experienced Vietnam as well as when he was there.
You had to be on pins and needles.
It was not fun. I was very, very fortunate to go back to Ohio University where my sorority sisters, who I of course knew already, and they were all so supportive and helpful. And when Jack talked about those cassette tapes, they would be on there talking to him too, and I think that was helpful for him. One thing he did not bring up that I think helped him get through is he would send me drawings, like sketches and things, pencil sketches of things he saw in the countryside or soldiers that he knew, things like that. So I had a sorority sister and her boyfriend who were kind of artsy, and so I said, take me to an art shop so I can get him some supplies. And I did do that, sent them over. He came back with a portfolio that, interestingly enough, he takes art classes every Monday morning now, and he had to bring in a portfolio, and he said, I don't have it, because he's not a professional artist, but does it because he loves it, and it's a great pastime. So I said, what about your Vietnam stuff? And he took that in, and he was a hit of the class. They posted it all over in the classroom, and all the older ladies who he takes classes with just, thought it was wonderful and asked him all these questions. But I do think it was very therapeutic for him while he was there. He talked about loneliness. It was also boredom, and from what he told me. So I think he did the art as therapy because he could express himself. He could share what he was experiencing with me and my family through his art. And so I was just very pleased that we came up with that. And he's still doing wonderful art today.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's great news.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good, and it continues to be good for me to do that.
Well, thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Aiden, do you have any questions that come to mind?
I do. First, I'd like to say it's a complete honor to hear your story today.
Thank you.
It's a privilege to be in your house. Vietnam, you see the reception of soldiers who were over there has just changed over time. How have you personally seen the perception and the reception of soldiers change from when you served to now? And what do you attribute that difference to, if any?
Wow. It's dramatic.
I have to go to a meeting, but are you going to talk about the honor flight?
Yeah, I'll mention that. Yes, yeah.
Lots of stuff. Thank you very much.
Well, I just say it's dramatic. When we came home, obviously, Kathy, you want to just get that? Sorry.
Call from Vivian Sparksville Ledge.
Okay, so it's dramatic. When we came home, obviously, you've seen and heard of all the bad things that happened. I didn't personally have anybody throwing things at me. There was nobody yelling at me, things like that. But we were pretty shunned. I would say is a description. There was a gentleman who was a Vietnam veteran and a Newsweek journalist who said, I think his name was William Brown, and he said, no, Broyles, I'm sorry, is his last name, to get that right. He said, we were treated, at best, we were treated with a tolerant politeness but somewhat like recovering from a social disease that should not be mentioned. And I think that was very common. Probably for the first 20 or 30 years, I didn't talk about Vietnam much, not because I was hesitant to say anything necessarily, but it was just uncomfortable. People didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to ask you about it, and they certainly didn't want to admit that there may be something wrong with you because you had served in Vietnam. So that was, not good. That was a tough thing to deal with. But beyond that, since that time, I think soldiers now get a much more deserving welcome, obviously, than we ever did. But what they have been doing over the years, I think, is tremendous. That is, people are recognizing Vietnam veterans. There were heroes there too. I mean, when I think of some of our guys, I just am amazed at what they were able to do and what they did do in a war that people did not appreciate. Their heroism was, in some ways, exceeded many others who we do acknowledge, because they didn't get the accolades. They didn't get taught or treated like they should have, let alone remembered like they should be remembered. And I'm talking about those who lost their lives. It's just so much better now. And I was able to go on an honor flight a year and a half ago. That was so therapeutic, so good for me. I got to tell you, since then, prior to then, I probably would think about Vietnam at least once a day. It was one of those little things in the back of your head. And since that honor flight, I feel so much better about the whole thing. So it was really good, and so people are doing a lot of good things now. So it's different for sure.
Well, Jack, let me thank you for doing this interview, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Pat,
Yes,
so much. I
thank you.
appreciate it. It's been a real privilege to do this, so it was great.
Thank you.